Welcome to Behind the Screens, a podcast where we talk to industry experts and the people who make Universal Screens a leader in the world of motorized retractable screens.
Welcome back. We've got another episode here of Behind the Screens. I'm Sean Culbertson, and joining me today, I'm back to messing it up. 10 episodes in, and I'm back to messing it up. I'm joined today with, I don't know, man. These guys are here.
How much did you drink earlier? That's the question.
Michael Longoria, Joe Serta, and Kevin Lofgren. We've got a bit of a tequila mixture here. I'll let Kevin describe what this is here.
So this is Añejo tequila, and then I let it sit with some orange and some cherries and kind of stuff that you would make an old fashioned with. A little bit of sugar, and it's been sitting for 3 days, and I poured it out for you.
It's smooth. Did you try it, Joe?
I did.
Careful. It's really smooth.
It doesn't taste like straight tequila, but it is straight tequila.
That's good. I need 2 bottles of this.
You need okay.
So
Homegrown.
So Kevin's joining us today. We know each other through a local DFW radio station's Facebook group. This sounds really stupid, but that's how we know each other.
It is.
We got introduced through, mutual friends, and we met at a lunch one day.
Jason's Deli.
Yeah, that's right. We met at a lunch, and Kevin has a company called Lofgren, and it is a marketing firm. And we started talking some business. And at the time, there was no traction because we weren't in the need of anything. But I believe a year and a half later, we circled back with you. And this past spring, we got new flyers made. You also redesigned the logo while still maintaining the current logo that we have, just a little bit of touches, and everyone loves that. And unfortunately, it's not even anywhere to be displayed here. But so that's how we know each other. We know each other on a personal level. That introduced us through that, and then you did some marketing work with us. So tell us a little bit about what Lofgren does as a company.
So my original company that I owned for 15 years was a marketing agency, and we primarily worked with Fortune 500 companies. And to be honest, that's it's pretty neat and exciting for a while, but after a while, it's just a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, and you end up kind of being beholden to their brand, and that makes sense. But I kind of enjoy creating more than I do executing. So, what Lofgren does is basically work with the smaller companies. So I typically work directly with an entrepreneur like you, and the end goal is usually increase revenue. That's just that's the end goal. But there are a lot of steps to get to the point where you can increase revenue. So I was a lead generation expert for 15 years. That's really all we did was for B2B companies. We were generating leads. But in order to do that, we had to have a brand that we could put in front of customers to get them interested in our client. Well, working with smaller businesses, many times their brand isn't really strong enough to go out and market. So if they say, I want leads, I want revenue, then the answer is, okay, well, we got to assess what you're missing. You may have a great logo and then we won't touch it. Or you may have a great tagline. We won't touch that, or your website, and we won't touch that. But if you aren't up to the standard that looks bigger than you actually are, then we're going to need to fill that gap with projects, frankly, that look like, logo projects or branding projects or website projects, brochure projects, all those things. Once those are done, most of my clients, not all of them, then engage into a lead generation campaign of some sort. But I think the primary benefit of working with me is that I'm a one-man shop now. Frankly, the internet contracting sites like Upwork or Fiverr, those types of sites have really opened up all possibilities for that, because I look like a general contractor, and then I have all these subs.
Right.
And my subs are in Romania and Bulgaria and, all across the world. So it allows me to work with entrepreneurs at a price point that, like, they're getting senior level strategy, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting senior level creative direction, but they're not paying for the massive amounts of overhead to have A-level American talent on staff.
Right. You mentioned you working with entrepreneurs, but on the flip side, you are very much an entrepreneur yourself, and started something many years ago, and have some stops on the way, and then now you've got your own thing. So kind of the focus, for bringing you in, was one, some other things that we'll get into later about this Renaissance man that you kind of are, but also mainly is that you've put everything out there. You've jumped in the deepest waters and done the whole entrepreneurship, which are a lot of our customers that are listening to this podcast. That's them. That's who they are.
Yeah.
And you've done that. So let's speak on that, the risk part, the just deciding one day, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going in and we're just going to see what happens.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention. The first company that I created, I guess I was about 30, 31. And it was right at the end of, do you remember when .coms were everything at 1999, 2000?
Yeah.
And then there was a bust like at the end of 2000 or so, somewhere in there. And then 9/11 happened like a year later. So it was just bam, bam to the industry. And every employer, I jumped through probably 4 or 5 different employment jobs where I would be there, they'd shut down. I'd be there, they'd shut down. I'd be there, they'd shut down. And I started to realize that the risk of going to find a new job was just as much as the risk of creating my own thing. So, and I had more control. Like it kind of felt like I was at their, I was at their mercy, at their leadership's mercy. I was at their strategic decisions mercy,
right.
And it hadn't worked out like several times in a row. And so, I started just by consulting with. I had a former coworker that then worked at Nokia and in Las Colinas, and she called me and said, "Hey, could you help me with this website that they need?" It was a pretty massive project, and so I'm like, "Well, I could not look for jobs and help you with that," and that's how it started.
Right.
So I would love to say it was some massive contemplation, and it was really just an opportunity presented itself to get involved, and I was striking out by being an employee.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes that's what's needed, but there's still a risk, and you put everything out there. And Joe, you're the same way. When you came over here, this was not established company. This was just an idea. It was. We had no idea where it was going to go, and even now you fast forward, even the idea that we had wasn't very big, so you didn't even know whether we were.
The risk was for sure there, but hey, look, it was worth it.
Yeah.
What pushes you to, because you get to the end of the diving board and you've got to go into the pool. Like, what pushes you to say, yeah, hey, let's do this? Like for me, if we rewind back when I got married, for it wasn't as big of a risk because I was very, very young, so but that was it. Let me go try this, and if it doesn't work, I'll just go get a job.
No, see, I don't know. I just had that feeling that, when, especially, being with Sean and Glenn, and they had been successful. Glenn with the shutter company, and then Sean with Creative Blinds. I'm like, it's got to be, and something told me, it's just, it's time.
Yeah.
So took the leap of faith, and
so how many years have you been here?
With Sean since 2010.
2010.
Wow.
So coming up on 11.
Going on 11 years.
So it's worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I left a job making tens and tens of dollars.
Tens of thousands of dollars?
Just tens of dollars.
Tens of dollars.
It's a big leap of faith.
But it was huge.
You came over here and made tens of dollars. Yeah. I remember what they paid you.
Tens of dollars an hour.
It was a lateral risk.
Yeah.
But it was a risk.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about Lofgren, because we've got clients all over the country that could possibly use your services as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about Lofgren and maybe the future of what you envision for the company.
Well, it's what the fulfilling part of it is working with entrepreneurs and helping them, empowering them, frankly, to be all they can be from a marketing standpoint. And I think that I think it's hard for entrepreneurs often to believe. Like, I think they think of a consultant pretty negatively. I think they think of a consultant as somebody who's going to come in and make some recommendations and walk away. And where I'm different is that I'm going to come in and make some recommendations and then stay and execute the projects that support those recommendations.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sometimes I'm working with the subcontractors that I work with all the time, and sometimes I'm actually working with employees who are there who just need better direction or even oversight. And I don't. That's not it's not critical. It's just sometimes the entrepreneur himself doesn't really, either he doesn't have the skill set or he doesn't have the time to really direct the people that he has on marketing. So if they have a marketing person, I'll usually assume kind of direction there and then report to the entrepreneur on a weekly basis, just saying this is where we are. So as far as where I see us going, I mean, I can tell you, at least currently, I have zero interest in employees.
Yeah.
After 15 years of my butt puckering every 2 weeks, like I just, at least not yet, I'm not ready to do that again.
Right.
And so my vision for the company is frankly to keep it one man show as long as I possibly can. And then, be as effective as I can with the clients that I have.
Right. So I mentioned earlier, Renaissance Man, but it's just, what I mean is that we're friends on Facebook. There's a lot of interaction there. We're part of some groups, but I've seen clips of you. I've seen videography that you've done. Obviously you've done work for us on a marketing level. And we've spoken in those meetings, and I've seen the things that you know and how you act. I've seen this drink that you've just made. But I've seen you act. I've seen a clip of you acting, and I've also you've got a best-selling children's book, and
That's
you're about to
true.
write another one.
It's written and illustrated. It just hasn't been released yet.
So let's hit on. So the acting. Is that acting a part of your background, or did I just happen to see a clip where you were acting?
No, like in high school, I was in theater or whatever. Like, I'm not an actor.
Okay.
But I can act. And so, like, for example, if a client says, here's what I think you saw. Here's what I think you saw. A very large Fortune 100 company was using us to do lead generation back when I was running Farstar. And that was my company. And we had this idea to create a mock interview because they were an HR related company, and the idea was we're going to have the interviewee coming and basically being a cluster, like somebody you do not want to hire.
Yeah.
Because the point was we're going to say we're going to help you hire better than this. So anyway, this concept, the client wasn't getting it. They didn't get it, and they didn't like it. But I was in my hotel room. I was traveling for business, and I'm like, screw it. Send me the script to the writer. I said, just send me the script, and I'll try to show them what I mean. And so here I am in my hotel room, being a complete. I was playing Jimbo, a sales guy, and he was a complete douchebag.
Yeah.
And so I put on like a really cheesy shirt, and I just riffed. I just read the script and was a real big douche. And sent it to them, and they said, "Oh yeah, no, we're in. We're gonna do this."
At this point is when I wish I had that video and that we could pop it up
I'm
on the screen.
sure I could
right
send
now.
it to you. You can.
Were you the
in there.
interview and the interviewee, or
I was just the
Okay.
You never see the interviewer. You only see it's like clips, like cut, and like jump cuts all the way across. Anyway, so I said, "Okay, great. We'll get it casted." And I get back to Farstar, and we start trying to cast people, and we're doing auditions, and we keep sending them to the client, and the client's like, nope. And finally they just said, actually it was somebody else who didn't know that it was me. And they said, why don't we just use that first guy? That guy was great.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up acting. And yeah, a lot of people think it was, what's it called? typecasting. Yeah, a lot of people thought, like it was just typecasting.
I
wasn't
thought
really
it was
acting.
great, man. I'll have to show these guys after we're done.
It's scary how easy it was.
And so I'm intrigued by the children's book. That's awesome because we've all, he's got kids. We've all got a handful of kids, and we've all read books, and we've all made up rhymes probably while we're doing that. And you put pen to paper and created a children's book, and I read it when you posted it out there and reviewed it, and it's good, man. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
man.
Why a children's book?
Well, once again, it's kind of just by accident. Like what happened was I was, let's see, probably 2008-ish. My daughter was 3 years old at the time, and she was just refusing to go to bed. She just would not go to bed, and we would lock horns about it every night. And anyway, finally, I started realizing that if I gave her something to look forward to when she got in bed, like she wasn't really interested in reading other people's books or whatever. So I would say, I'm going to create a story for you. And so I would always go to bed, get in bed with her, and we'd look up at the ceiling, and then I'd say, okay, kind of like Mad Libs, like give me a place, give me a person, give me a thing, give me your best friend. Who do you, and then I'd create a story. Well, anyway, at one point I told somebody that I was doing this, and they said, you should record your stories because that'll be a special memory someday. And I'm like, oh, it's not a bad idea. So I started on my iPhone just recording the nighttime sessions. And
as Jimbo?
No, not as Jimbo. No, he has not made an appearance in my child's bed. Anyway, so one night she was saying, I don't want to go to sleep. And I said, but think of all the great things you could dream about. And she said, like what? And so I said, well, you could dream of birdies that sing. You could dream of fairies with wings. I kind of started rhyming things that she could dream about, and it ended up on the recording. And I don't know what. I guess I remember thinking that wasn't bad. I thought that didn't suck. And so I went back and listened to the recording and just transcribed it. The only thing I changed before I turned it into a book was at the time I had said you could dream about all the reasons your daddy is so funny. And then when I was making it a book, I was like, not every kid's got a dad. And I didn't want to create a book that made somebody feel sad, that they didn't have a dad. And so I changed it to why your friends are so funny. But that's the only change that I made. And I basically, I sat on it for close to 10 years. And then I thought, I guess I think it was because I saw Goodnight Moon, and I was like, that's like 10 sentences. I've written 10 sentences that work. And so I went to a friend who was an illustrator and just said, hey, I don't have any money to pay you, but we could share the deal if you want to, if you're interested. And she said yes. So, she illustrated it, and then I sat on that for 2 years. And then when COVID happened, I was not as busy. Many of my clients had said pause until we figured this out. And during that time, I decided to really look into it and made it happen. So
anyway. He's got good friends. I had a good friend. I told him some of my invention ideas, and he listened to me. We'd be rich by now. Or the car cover.
He had the hail cover too. He had a hail cover for cars. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And now I'm actually Googling.
We were driving to Florida.
I Googled just recently where to buy one because we had to park some cars outside of the house. He should have invented that. I could get
look,
one.
Somebody got your invention. And I'm like,
that's funny.
So I think the book goes back to, or you writing the book goes back to what we originally wanted the topic to be about risk. I mean, you're putting something out there for the world to see, and it's your thoughts, and it's a very it's
intimate,
a very intimate thought that you're putting out there that in today's world could be, hey, that's awesome, but it also is the flip of what is this? This garbage.
Who do you think you are?
And so you're putting that. Who are you? How do you just go and say, hey, man, I'm going to do this?
Yeah. I think that's kind of just woven into my fabric a little bit. I think that I've always, I I know that even in junior high and elementary school, I know that I was always willing to be a dork for a good laugh, or willing to embarrass myself and then make fun of myself to make friends. Like, I think it was a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism in a sense. I was bullied a lot in seventh and eighth grade were pretty bad. And coming out of that, I think, like, I remember people picking on me. And actually, the best story about this is that 5 guys picked me up and took me to the bathroom and dunked my head in a toilet that had not been flushed, by the way.
That really happened?
It really did happen.
I didn't know that really happened.
I didn't know that really happened
No,
to
it
people. I thought
happened.
it was just in movies.
And as it was happening and I was taking the plunge, I just was thinking to myself, you know, like, I can't fight back. I mean, there were 5 of them, and they were 2 years older than I was. And so I just thought the only way I think I can make this work for me is to laugh with them and act like I did it on purpose. Like, I'm part of it, you know? And so they tip me over and I start laughing, and I get up and they're all laughing and I'm laughing with them. I'm high-fiving them like, they're freaking awesome. Let's do that again. Walked out of the bathroom sopping wet. And, you know, like, I wanted to cry. Like, I wanted to just melt away, but I just felt like I had more power if I made it mine and didn't let them have any power over me. And in that moment, I was in 9th grade. In that moment, I do think I made a decision. Like, from now on, I'm going to be out, and I'm going to be loud, and I'm going to be okay with whatever anybody thinks of me, as long as I'm with retaining my own power. So I feel like that's a little bit how I approach life in general. Like, if I got an idea for a book, I'll put it out there. It's not like I'm trying to be a best-selling children's book author. Couldn't
I like
think of it.
childish author.
Childish author. I already am that. So yeah, mission accomplished. You know, it's not like it's going to be a career or anything, but it's just something I had. So
That's cool.
But I think
That's pretty cool.
I think it's very courageous, because, I mean, there's
Thanks.
a lot of people out there that are afraid to write a book, afraid to sing, afraid because of the response that they're going to get. And a lot of times you just got to stop. You know, you've got to put that away and do what you want to do, because there's always going to be people out there that are going to be negative and say something.
That would be good for you. Take his advice and, you know, tell a story to all your 6 kids. You could have a bunch of books.
I could have a bunch of books right now.
just make recordings.
That's right.
But no, I think
I appreciate
it's
that.
awesome that you
awesome.
take that risk, even though that, especially nowadays with social media and everything going on, that you could be criticized in every way, and sometimes you've got to just not worry about that. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do. One of the things that I did as a college kid was I sold books door to door. I did it for 5 years, and I was really good at it. But the only reason I was good at it was because I would literally, like, throw myself out of my car and run up to the door and hit the doorbell as fast as I could. Because if I took any time, I was going to turn around. I was going to sit in my car. I was going to drive away. I had to throw myself out there just to make sure that I got there. And then once the doorbell had been rung, I couldn't run away. I mean, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about this. Like, I didn't ask anybody's opinion. I didn't tell my mom, who I tell everything to, that I was going to do it. And it wasn't like I said, I'm not going to tell my mom. I didn't consult anybody, because I didn't really care what advice I got back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to do it. I want my daughter to have a book that was made like that I created with her. And then the second book is one that I did with my son.
Well, what's the name of the first book?
First book is called Dream. I
guarantee you'll sell another copy today.
Today I'm going to go buy it. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
And the second book is called Legacy. And the first book is just about dreaming. And, you know, it does kind of end with talking about my dreams for her. Like, it starts with, you could dream of this, you could dream of that, you could dream of this, that. And then it ends with, but I really hope the dreams I have for you come true. You know, it's that kind of ending.
Yeah.
Sorry for the spoiler.
Sorry to spoil it.
I'm only
not
gonna
gonna get the book no more.
I'm just buying it so I can tell my kids, like, I know
this guy.
Like, yeah.
And then the second one called Legacy is similar in format, but it's basically saying you can be whatever you want to be, but what you're going to be is my legacy. Like, you're going to be what's left of me, and I hope I just want you to be the best you can be. So that's the message.
You got
of
the rhyming down. I
It
like
does.
it.
Yeah.
It does.
I can
He's
rhyme.
in character right now.
I can rhyme. In high school, I was in a band, and I was the primary lyricist. And if Sean ever gets a hold of any of that,
Oh man,
Can
This
you
is-
find that
Yeah,
for us?
big trouble. But the rhymes that I wrote in high school for my songs are pretty on par with my children's book. If that tells you
Childish
anything.
writing.
Yeah.
Well, Sean used to be a rapper too, so
Oh.
you can get his songs.
Yeah, it took
as
me a
well.
long
Maybe
time
you
to
could-
let anyone hear that.
Maybe you could do the audio version of the book. You could rap it.
I should do that. I've seen those on TikTok where they take children's books and they try to mumble rap into the version. Yeah. So, well, man, I appreciate you coming out here and sitting with us. And, you know, for anyone that is listening or watching that is specifically a client of ours or a customer of ours, you know, Lofgren did a great job on the flyers, new flyers that we have. We had a trade show last week, and we used we created 2 different ones, and we were able to use the business to business ones last week.
Nice.
And then we'll be getting out the ones to our customers for the homeowners pretty soon. So you did tremendous work on that for us. And you know, if the services are needed, we can certainly reach out to me, and I can get you in touch with Kevin. But you know, the main reason for coming in was that risk, you know, of taking that risk to start something new, of taking that risk to put your children's book out there to see if, you know, it's accepted and published. And then you said something just a few minutes ago about how you live your life after you told us your stories about growing up, and that you basically decided to just throw myself into my work, throw myself in just put it out there. And I think that's probably the key point of this podcast, and that anyone that's listening, whether it be, you know, running a retractable screen business like most of our customers, or whether you're running your own small business or whatever it is, if it's my son listening to this, you know, and it's about soccer or academics, is just, you know, throwing yourself out there and just putting yourself out there and not really worrying about what the rest of the world thinks, and just doing it, you know, and good things will usually come after that. So I do appreciate you coming and sitting with us.
Of course. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
That
me.
was delicious. If I didn't think it was going to really affect me, I would have been pounding it, but I'm probably going to down it when this is over.
No, it's good.
It really is
Excellent.
good.
I'm
I'm
glad
going
you
to
like
have
it.
to get the recipe for that.
Sounds good.
So, but thank you again
Of course,
for
thank
joining
you.
us. That wraps up this episode of Behind the Screens. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Screens. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player and leave us a review.